Good afternoon to you. I'm Merv Wyeth and I'm Secretary to APM's Benefits and Value SIG, and I'm going to be the host today for this webinar. We're going to use Mentimeter, which we often do, and we want to use that to capture your thoughts, comments, and collective wisdom as we go. Today's presentation, it is an important topic and it's got bags of practical application, so we know you're going to find this investment of time well. Automation. Automation is common in many sectors, for example, finance, logistics, manufacturing, and retail. But project delivery is something of a late adopter of automation. You might even call it a laggard. Some of you may be familiar with Professor Bent Fluvier's law of mega projects. And projects, he says, they are over budget, over time, and under benefits, over and over again. Which is really interesting. So how could automation help with that? We're going to find out what automation is all about, how it will impact on the profession generally and affect you specifically. And James is going to explain all that inside the hour. So that will be great. Now, a little bit about James. James is the CTO of an organization called Projecting Success. He has responsibility there for full stack development, data science, and artificial intelligence. James is passionate about transforming project management, which I think will quickly become apparent to you. And some of James's skills include Power BI, Python, and machine learning. And I know that James is going to do a couple of demos today. So what we want to know first of all is what term best describes the main focus of the organization in which you work. So as we see the results come in, it'll get an idea of where people are coming from. Looks like transport and government are winning out at the moment, but a wide range of sectors. And I think that'll become relevant as we go on through. So well, here we want to know what type of project related job role do you typically perform? And we've organized these into role groups, if you like. So you'll see on your devices, you've got project leadership, senior management, directors, senior leadership team, etc. Project delivery specialists, but typically we see the bulk within there. We've got the business analysis folk, change specialists, benefits manager, which is my area, and then we've got data analysts and scientists, which is clearly James's area, and then some, not many, students and non-project related. So James, I guess you can see this information coming in, and we'll be able to kind of tune your presentation accordingly. Automation. Do you personally think that automation will be useful in your organization? I guess if no one to James, you'd be in trouble.
Absolutely, yeah.
And we'll move on to the next question, but we can see, I haven't got the percentage on there, but over 50, getting on for 50% really useful. Which areas of project work do you think are most suited to automation? And this beautiful word cloud should give us some sort of clue as to what you think on that one. Reporting is coming through very strongly. James, feel free to jump in on this one. And,
yeah, I mean, reporting seems to be very dominating actually, which I guess it's unsurprising. And I've got quite a few examples of actually reporting that I'm going to show today. So interesting seeing testing. Not really thought about using automation in a testing environment, but certainly design, data analysis, all these things are very well automated at the moment. Yeah, lots of interesting results there.
James, I think it's probably about time then I hand it over to you.
Thank you very much, Merv, for the introduction. It looks like we've got a really good crowd of people watching today. So as Merv mentioned, we're going to be talking about how automation will make our jobs easier. Just a quick recap, I guess. Merv did quite a good job of introducing me, but I am the CTO at Projecting Success. My background is in mathematics, so I have a PhD in Pan-Levé equations and orthogonal polynomials. And that was a few years ago now, but subsequently I moved into industry and work as a data scientist and full stack developer. I guess Merv touched on full stack developer and wasn't really sure what it meant, but if you think of your sort of, maybe it's your dashboard as a stack of different technologies. So it's not just the Tableau or the Power BI dashboard that's driving the whole thing. You might have tools on site which collect the information, and then you might have a data pipeline which pumps the data into a database which sits in Azure, and then you might have an API which sits on a different cloud platform and pushes the data straight into your Power BI report, which might sit in the cloud or it might sit on a server somewhere, a local server. So that whole stack of technology is in place just to provide a bit of analytics, and I'm sort of responsible and skilled enough to kind of work in that entire different technology stack. So hopefully that's a bit clearer for you. So this is slightly different to the title, but there's sort of this buzz phrase, RPA, that's being thrown around a lot. So I just wanted to explain what RPA, or robotic process automation, really means. So this is kind of a broad phrase where this is the automation of sort of mundane tasks. So quite often people they don't really understand what we mean by robotic process automation. It's not the idea of small robots running around taking over these kind of manual tasks. It's actually a software-based solution doing things like reporting, all the things that people mentioned in the beginning. If you've never really heard of RPA automation, basically if you can click it, type it, copy paste it, scrape it, do Excel with it, or do optical character recognition with it, then you can automate it. And some of the really good candidates for this are the highly repetitive, mundane, rule-based, sort of stable and processes and systems that lots and lots of users work with. And that's the low-hanging fruit here. So just in case you're completely lost, if you think you do something on your computer, maybe you do it every day, you have to process a particular email, you have to upload a piece of data somewhere, you have to download something and then save it to various locations. We can actually get another machine and we create that process flow on another machine, and then we push it to a robot that's stored on the machine you do the work on, or it could be on a network machine as well. And then that task is actually completed. So that can be in two different ways. That can be an assistant for you, so it works alongside, so you implement that automation when you want, or it can work in the background overnight, so you never even see it happen. You just deal with the output of that process. So some of the improvements, of course, there's customer improvements. There's a massive improvement to employee experience. People really welcome automation, certainly in my experience, when it helps them take things off their desk that they don't want to do. In my experience, people don't like to spend hours and hours and hours doing repetitive tasks. They like to concentrate their efforts on the more exciting bits of their job. It also helps with compliance. Your quality goes up, and your time to value increases, and it gives the organization of the business more digital agility as well. So some of the benefits, it can be more than 10 times faster. Some of these bots we've got are working incredibly quickly compared to when humans actually try and complete the same tasks. They're 100% accurate, assuming that you've coded them correctly. And there's a rapid return on investment, which kind of fits in with quick implementation. It's non-intrusive. So some of these softwares we're going to talk about today, they sit over the top of your organization. So they don't have to be nested within other bits of your organization, sort of technical infrastructure. So it's really, really easy to implement. And of course, you can use these tools to reduce the big backlogs, which is generally where we've been drafted in to external companies, because they're just being overwhelmed with tasks and they can't get people to do them, or they keep leaving. So just a really simple example. This is a personal assistant that someone in the company made just as a demo. But imagine that you want to have some information on where's the best place to travel on holiday. So this user interface you can see is called UiPath. So this is one of the softwares where you can build the processes. So this is just an application that sits on your computer, and you can see the process is actually the start of the process of the personal travel assistant that's in front of you, and we're just going to run it. So it's going to input, it's going to come up with a load of input boxes where we have to enter information, and I'll just read them out to you as you go. So we start the process, and it asks us a question: where would you like to travel on holiday? So we've put Australia, and where do you want to fly from? So we've put London, and then it gives us some dates that we want. And then it opens Expedia. You see it's entering all of the information and then it actually web scrapes that page, and you can see on the right hand side it's saved that. As we just expand that Excel file, you can see we've immediately got all that information. This was a bot running in real time, so you can see it's significantly quicker than having to remember the website, having to navigate to that link yourself. And of course, this is a very, very simple process. Just an example of the kind of things it can do. So the market, so we've just spoken about UiPath. There are a few other companies out there doing automation as well. So there's Automation Anywhere, there's Blue Prism, there's Microsoft Flow, which you've probably heard of, and then there's Python. So UiPath is, in my mind, kind of the market leaders. They have a community edition. So if you're really interested in the things I'm talking about today, then it's actually a free edition which you could go and use and start to automate things, you know, in your own time without having any kind of commitment at all. There's Automation Anywhere, which is really good at looking at unstructured data, but they don't have a free edition that you can go and use. The UiPath also has training, so online free training where you can go and there's hours and hours, and you can learn how to do this completely from scratch. Whereas companies like Blue Prism and Automation Anywhere, they only have template files for you to go and look at. Microsoft Flow is kind of restricted to the Microsoft suite for obvious reasons, but you can still do a lot with it. So you can do a lot with your emails and filtering emails and moving them around, extracting data. But of course, you don't have the flexibility you have with the other three that we have in that grey box. Python I have included, but really it's not user friendly enough and it's not flexible enough to be classed as kind of RPA software. But you can do a lot of automation within Python, which is obviously open source. And we do that in the company. So you can do web scraping, you can build apps, you can send information around using APIs. But it certainly doesn't come with that user interface. It's not drag and drop like the other pieces of software. So generally speaking, we're going to use a mixture of UiPath, Microsoft Flow, and Python today. So some internal examples of automation. So this is within projecting success. So starting in the blue box, our intern hours are recorded using Trello. So we might have anywhere from sort of a couple of interns to sort of 10 working at the same time. And they record all of their monthly hours on a piece of software called Trello, which hopefully you've heard of. So a bot can access this information because it has its own login. It web scrapes it, checks it for mistakes or potential anomalies, and then sends it off to payroll. And in the orange box in the middle, we've got our newsletter. So this is automatically scraped and created, and it renders HTML and then posts it online. So it's a bot that actually walks around, gathers more information. I'll say a little bit about that in a minute. And in the green box, we have various bots which scrape data sources daily, weekly, monthly, and we just pump these into servers rather than having somebody to go and maybe web scrape these things and remember to do it. It's all just totally automated. It means that people don't forget to do it, and there's obviously not the burden of having to complete those tasks as well. In the yellow box, we've got our meetup attendee information. So we use a bot to web scrape this information from the internet, and then we've built an app in Power Apps that actually is all saved in the cloud, so that when people turn up on meetups, we can easily figure out who is there and who isn't, and then we can start to do analysis on that as well. But just to say a little bit more about our intern hours. So I've got a small video here, and this plays quite quickly, so I'm just going to mention the fact that we've actually got a hybrid model here. So we're using UiPath as we were before, but we've actually incorporated a Python script to check employee hours. So we just make sure that the employee hours are not more or less than 10% of what they've claimed in the past. And if they are, then it flags it up and asks if you want to go and look at it. Of course, you could build in any rule that you wanted to, and we just did this one for an example. Apparently, I wasn't allowed to show our actual employee salaries, hourly paid amounts and things like that that we sent to payroll. So we've actually redone it with some footballers, and we actually create a PowerPoint at the end. So you can see the bot is immediately logging into Trello with its own login. It navigates to the right page to find all of the relevant hours that have been worked, scrapes that information. You see it should open Excel at the bottom. So it takes a copy of that and then sends it off to payroll. But I mentioned it invokes this Python script as well. So it actually invokes this Python script on all of the employees just to make a better look at have been web scraped. Then it gives you that opportunity. So there is that chance for a bit of manual intervention. And then the email is sent to payroll. And then if you had any kind of reporting to do on this, then it actually automatically creates a PowerPoint management to see, what interns what's the cost of all our current interns. Then this is being automatically created. And obviously you've got complete flexibility to create whatever you want as well. So And like I said, this is actually something we use every month within the company. So I just want to say a little bit more about our newsletter as well. So this is actually a web scrape using Python. So we have a bot which it goes to 6 or 7 different sources which we've actually identified, and then web scrapes current articles and takes articles that are interesting to us. So things like automation, data analysis within a project environment, machine learning, things like that. And then it actually produces a Word document which we review. We can take articles, we can add blurbs, things like that. And then that Word document is actually transformed into a piece of HTML. So you can see an example of one of our newsletters on the right-hand side. There's a snippet there of just at the top of the newsletter. I can just open up the latest copy of it as well. So this is obviously, we save it on our website, but we also send this out from MailChimp as well. But this is all created in minutes. Obviously these link to different articles, but we've got the topics there: project delivery, data analytics, AI and machine learning, and of course robotic process automation. And then we included like things like our events as well. But previously this was taking us hours and hours to create this kind of content. Now we can do it in minutes, really.
James, on that newsletter, was there anything about the apprenticeship scheme? I'm thinking about how people can start to acquire some of these skills.
Yeah, that's sure. So we kind of reference upcoming events, our meetups, our hackathons, things like that. And our latest event is actually our project data analyst apprenticeship. So this is starting in February. It's a 15-month apprenticeship, and I will actually be doing the majority of the tuition on that. So we'll be teaching people data visualization. Automation is actually one of the big topics in it. We're going to be talking about statistics, machine learning, how to use things like Power BI, how to code in Python, so a little bit of programming. You'll also be welcome to attend our community hackathon events and our meetups as well, so you'll get real hands-on experience with construction company data and oil and gas data. So yeah, no, we're really looking forward to it.
Brilliant. I've got a couple more questions. I think rather than save them to the Q&A, we'll perhaps pop them in if that's all right with you.
No problem.
So here's one: how does an automated task deal with changes in connected software? For example, if Expedia changed their website in the example shown.
So it's a good question. There are a number of ways you can. If websites change, the bots actually are latching on to selectors in the web page. So web pages can move around. It's not a problem at all, as long as the selectors stay the same. So there's a really good example of a bot web scraping data out of a web page, and every single time the web page changes and the bot isn't unaffected. It's completely robust. Obviously, if there is a major change to a website, like the URL changes or something, you will need to go in and reselect. But we're talking, minutes and seconds to make these kind of minor changes, and not hours and days. But it does happen.
Okay. And one more, just on the same topic from Jason here: how much can you check relevance when scraping for the newsletter?
So we're in the process of creating a model actually, which does exactly that. So it ranks newsletter articles based on the text that's in them. So we're going to use a naive Bayes model to classify whether the relevance of a project. So the problem is we don't have a big data set at the moment. So we probably need a few thousand articles that we would consider interesting, and then and exactly the opposite of that as well. Some ones that we've discarded and said that the bot has picked up and we don't need, and then we can give a value between 0 and 1 of how relevant they are. That's still in progress, so I can't say how successful that is, but based on the other applications that I've worked on in machine learning, this is exactly what things like naive Bayes are for. At the moment, this is kind of a manual task, but because of that manual task, we're actually building that training data set every month that goes by.
Brilliant. Okay, I'll let you crack on, but thank you for that.
Okay, no problem. Thanks, Murph. So some external examples. I did see construction actually in that word cloud was actually quite big in the sectors that people work in. So hopefully these two examples of certainly Kia and Osborne will be interesting to the people that put construction there. And I'm going to go through all these in detail. So I'll make a start from left to right. But Kia very kindly let us advertise this particular example, but this is around federating their BIM models as well. So BIM, for anybody who doesn't know, stands for Building Information Management, I think, and somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm a mathematician, not necessarily a construction expert. So these BIM models are modified weekly, daily basis by maybe their quantity surveyors, and actually it's up to the BIM managers to process these changes and federate the models, and it can take hours and hours. So Kia got us involved to help automate one of these processes, and we identified it as actually a 71-step process. And I'll go through sort of key steps with you. So the first step is to log into BIM Extra, and that's actually required two-factor authentication. We needed to download the models that have been updated, and only those models. Then we needed to extract them to two different locations. So one was a live location and one was an archive, a historic location, to keep a copy. And then we needed to open these files in a piece of software called Celebri and update the models, and then save the files, the archive and the live folder, and then email the team and say, guys, everything has been updated. If you want to use the latest models, then please go to this link. So this is taking on one project, this is taking 150 hours a year, and subsequently I found out that a larger project was taking 8 times as long to do this. So this was somebody's job to actually click through and complete these processes. Obviously, it is quite a complicated process, with 3 different systems working in conjunction, and they were having a problem with, it's taking so long for these models to be updated. There's a period of time where people that are using the BIM models that are actually out of date at that point. So it's really important that as soon as these changes are made, that people can use the correct latest information. So here again is a UI path. So this is the process. I can scroll down and show you the whole process there just before we start the actual automation, and I'll talk you through. So it's opening BIM Extra. It's already extracted the two-factor authentication code from the email, processed it, and navigating through to the correct project page, finding only the models that need updating, and downloading that zip file location. So that's an hours to run. And I thought that wouldn't be that exciting, so we've obviously fast forwarded it. And then we open up Celebri. Even the opening, it's really quite demanding for a laptop, and nothing else seemed to be working at the same time. So this would be a significant part of somebody's day. We opening the correct SMC file, and then open a template email and send that to the team, and that's the email being received. So that could be run, that doesn't even have to run on someone's computer. That could run every day at 5 p.m. Once everyone's gone home, and then it could run for 4 or 5, 6 hours overnight, so that everybody's at least got the latest federated model in the morning. The PMO, the Project Management Office, they generate a lot of reports from emails, and we've been doing some work with them very recently, actually, creating weekly reports based on invoices in their emails. And they actually called their bot Cyril, which I thought was quite amusing. But I do refer to the name quite a few times, so otherwise, if I didn't tell you that, you wouldn't know who on earth Cyril is. But that's the actual bot's name. So the steps are that Cyril's email account is checked. So the bot has its own email account, just to determine if there are unread messages. If there are, then it opens that email and it reads in things like the name, the company, the job title, etc., from the invoice that's actually embedded within the email. Then it opens Excel and it adds these bits of information to various sheets of the file. And then once this is saved, it actually opens Power BI, which is a report already connected to the data, so that they can start to do some basic analysis on some of this invoice information. This is obviously, very time consuming. Copying and pasting happens a lot in organizations, and it's potentially quite dangerous to give this job to somebody else, because the emails might come to a very specific inbox where you wouldn't want somebody else to have access to it. And of course, it's important that the level of accuracy is kept very high, because if you're doing analysis on these type of things, you want to be able to pass on the correct material to your superiors. So this is the bot working. It's very quick. It opens the email. It opens Outlook. It checks for unread emails. It opens that correct one. It takes a scrape of that particular page, and then it already saves it in Excel, does some of the filtering, and then just to show you a copy from the invoice itself, markup that we did, names if you can read them, processing emails, and has a lot of flexibility with scraping bits of information from either PDFs or HTML embedded within those inbox emails. And then finally, Osborne Construction. So we did some work with them probably about 12 months ago, optimizing how they process their delivery notes. So they spend a lot of time with people on site processing this delivery information. So I'll just take a step back, first of all, and tell you a little bit more about Osborne Construction. So they're working within railroad and housing, healthcare sectors. And in 2018, they had 166 live projects. They submitted 4,757 orders, and that equated to nearly 16,500 individual line items. And you'll see why that's relevant in a moment. So the system they had in place beforehand is that they'd make a web order, your coffee, your tea bags, a hammer, I don't know, some other things that they require on a construction site. A delivery is made, and they hand over what they call an MRS, a material receive sheet, and somebody would be taken off site to type that up into Excel. This was not very popular with the people on site. They would then email that MRS over to the office, where the office would compare it with an invoice, and then they would actually pay the supplier. And what Osborne wanted us to do was to do optical character recognition, which is taking images of these characters and actually using a machine learning model to convert that into a digital text that we can process. And it isn't 100% accurate. So we actually took a step back, because we thought these sort of inaccuracies with OCR could potentially cause a few problems when paying these invoices. And we realized that once we did a process review, there was actually a better way. So there was an order confirmation, of course, when this web order was made. And this came through within an email. So we used Python to actually process these order confirmations, which contained all the line items that were ordered. And we converted that email, that order confirmation, into tabular information, and then hosted it in the cloud, and then built an app that was connected to that data. This was costing Osborne about 2,000 hours a year, which equated to about £80,000. Like I said, it was quite demotivating for employees to be taken away from their busy day to type out information that on a piece of paper in front of them. Must be quite frustrating. And errors were made because they would write things in shorthand. The office compared this with the invoice, it wouldn't match up, and that's where all of these delays really incurred. There'll be lots of to and fro with emails and phone calls. So this is actually a copy of the app we made, running on my laptop, but on site it would, run on an iPad or a tablet of some kind. I can just show you first of all the data. So this is just a SharePoint list of the data that's come from the email confirmation. So you log in securely, you choose which site in front of you. So in this case, it's the Lee Brothers. And then this is real data, by the way. And then you just select things that you can add comments about what's actually on the back. And if it was on a tablet, you'd need to have some sort of mobile data, but it's immediately writing that data back to the server. A much, much better system, and would really stop employees from feeling irritated about having to take their time away to do on site. And then you can see that just with a quick refresher of the page, that the data's been updated, and you've got yeses and nos whether things have been delivered. We've talked about what we're doing internally with automation. We've talked about what we've done externally, and then finally what we've done so far with community. So we have our Project TAC events, and this was actually an example from Project TAC 4. So we had a number of challenges, and one of them was to create a hands-free way of reporting safety incidents on site. So we had in Project TAC 4, this is members of the public. So we had 80 participants. There were 9 challenges, and the idea is to hack over a weekend. There's £1,000 worth of prizes, and there were 5 different masterclasses as well. So it was Team 6 if I remember correctly, came up with Safety Steve. So this was a process flow. And so it was a bit like Alexa or the Google equivalent, and you could report safety incidents very quickly and very easily on the go. So if you had, I don't know, you weren't hands-free and you saw somebody that was breaking some kind of policy on site, you could record that incident. You don't have to go back to the office and type it onto a laptop. It means that your data source is going to be much more rich and actually kept completely up to date as well. So I've got a quick video that I want to show you.
Talk to Safety Steve.
Sure, here's the test version of Safety Steve. Hi, how are you doing?
John is not wearing gloves.
Your issue is not wearing gloves. What is your location?
The location is Zone 2.
Your issue is at Zone 2. What is your risk level?
Low. Low.
I see it's a low risk event. Thanks for reporting, smiley face.
So that was actually recorded at the hackathon event. So that's why there's 80 people in that room. That's why it wasn't that ideal, but all that data is being pushed to an SQL server and organized appropriately. That whole piece of development was over the course of a weekend. So it was half a day on Saturday and then about probably half a day again on Sunday. That's the kind of the rate at which these kind of things can be developed. So that's all of my examples that I was going to talk through today. Hopefully that's given you a good overview of at least what automation is and some of the technologies that can be used to take these kind of mundane tasks certainly off of our desks.
Thanks ever so much, James. That's been brilliant. We'll do a couple more Mentimeter questions now. I have given people fair warning, I think. So we're just trying to get an idea of awareness and uses, and I've used a word cloud approach, so no more than 25 characters. Before today, how aware were you of the technologies that we have discussed? I think there's a bit of a pattern here.
Yeah, certainly not at all. That's quite striking, isn't it?
Yes, it is. But you know, hopefully this has been a real aha moment for people. I know it has been for me. So that's fantastic as it comes in, and then we've got a good number voting, but please continue to send that in and answer any previous questions as well, but a very low level awareness. And then what we want you to think about is what are or will be the benefits of project work automation to you personally. So a bit of reflection here, slightly longer answers will come in. And we'll have a look at those in a moment. James, just to give you fair warning, and I know on I don't know if it was the last hackathon or one before, there was a team that put together an application for recognizing, I think it was metal bars in the building.
That's right, yeah.
Using that kind of, would that be machine learning or artificial intelligence? I don't know, but I wonder if you could explain that.
So we had a challenge that was centered around, you know, we have a lot of construction images that were taken on. Can we do anything with that, you know, quite rich data source? So we used, we spun up a machine learning model within Azure to manually label quite a few thousand images. So we got some interns to help us with that, and we were actually looking for rebar. So we're just trying to identify if a picture contains rebar or not. And then we fed that information to this model within Azure, and it actually, the accuracy was incredibly high. It was, I can't remember exactly, but it was definitely within the 90s. And then we actually took a step further at the next hackathon, and we started to say, well, what else can we identify from these pictures? Can we, you know, start to identify things like all the plant that's on site, piping, any other kind of electrical equipment, things like that. And again, the model was incredibly accurate, and that time we did it from an unsupervised perspective. label, really good results, and the kind of use cases for that were developing all the time. You know, if there was an incident on site and you'd want to see if we had to quickly pull up all the images of cranes that we had to see if we could identify, you know, was something wrong, was something in the wrong place. You know, you could do that very quickly.
That answer's coming through. I don't know if you've been able to look at those in the background. But,
yeah, I struggle to read and speak at the same time.
Oh, okay, yes. I think it's very clear that a lot of it is around getting rid of these kind of banal and repetitive tasks.
More fun. I like that. Yeah, I completely agree.
And actually doing them a whole lot better. You talk about higher levels of accuracy, etc., which I think it's really important.
Yeah, very positive thing. And yeah, more time to innovate, and I think more time to, you know, step back and think about, you know, other areas that you can add value to in your role. That's really good. Time saving.
In fact, we'll push on to other questions, but again, people can respond to that. And maybe that last one that you mentioned there, it comes through in terms of, I guess, this concern about, you know, if this takes hold, people becoming unemployed. How are we going to deal with that aspect, the sort of negative?
I think that is a really reoccurring theme. That you know, are people worried about it? And certainly, I was at a UiPath automation conference just a few months ago with 3,000 delegates there, and it was a huge theme. They didn't kind of shy away from it at all. They've conducted enormous surveys. So Walmart and PwC conducted massive surveys with massive people, and it seems like the themes are that people are happy to reskill. People want to learn these techniques, and actually companies like Walmart are pushing out a robot for everyone, so like an assistant. So rather than having only your 4 or 5 processes in your company automated, even the little things, so where you're opening your email and extracting some information, or you're uploading stuff, you're going to have a bot for everybody, and even you know, people are going to be reskilled, and people are willing to reskill to kind of execute these kind of automations, and I think that's actually really positive.
Yeah, I mean, along those lines, Lucy asked the question: how can she learn more about this? What's the best approach?
I would say because of the fact that the UiPath have such a good you know, platform for learning. If you actually want to learn practically, I would say just download the community edition and play with it. It's so easy, and Studio X is an even easier version. You'll be opening websites and moving information around in you know, in an hour. It's really good fun. It is. I've seen that in the comments. You know, it is actually really good fun. I was really enjoying it. And if you want to know more about sort of the applications, then search for stuff on YouTube. I would search any of the companies that I mentioned in the beginning, so Blue Prism, Automation Anywhere, or UiPath, and you'll see some really cool applications. There are also meetups and things like that as well. So there are automation meetups. So if you've heard of Meetup, just go to their website or Google them and search for an automation group, and there'll definitely be you know, lots of very enthusiastic people from the public that like to automate things in their own time as well.
Okay, we've got a question here related to benchmarking. Thank you, Tim. And I guess one of the things that I know you're also involved in is this whole idea of data sharing into data trusts. Are you able to kind of just, I know it's slightly off piece, but give us a little bit of information about that?
Yeah, sure. So I guess I'll start off with saying maybe what a data trust is, because probably a few people scratching their head, but it provides the legal structure so that data can be shared safely. So it's not just a big bucket that everybody pours their data into and then everybody has access to everything. It's all the governance and all the structure around how it's possible for actually quite sensitive data to be shared safely, which is obviously a big concern for people at the moment. So there are data trusts that exist. There are a few pilots that the Open Data Institute have created. I think they're around environmental issues and things like that. But actually, I think the industry is actually really starting to move over to the idea of creating kind of a project data trust where we can start to load in things, safety information, risk information, schedule information, even cost information in certain cases. And if, I think we can actually really improve product delivery and drive down costs and stop things, stop late projects by sharing this data in a very, very careful way.
Yeah, that's a great answer. I guess on the sort of data quality issue, we've got this, does this kind of process have to have the data in precisely the right format, or how well can it cope with things like misspellings, etc.?
I think there are a number of ways of dealing with that. I guess it all comes down to how well you build your process. So if you want it to be really robust and cope with lots of different formats, you have to build branches in your process. So lots of checks to see what type of file you've got, if it's in the right format at each stage. And that all depends on what you're processing. If you're processing very unstructured information, then you might have various pipelines that the bot will have to walk down, and you might have 10 different streams for a process. Whereas if it's very simple information, a particular date, and it always comes in the right form, then it makes your life a lot easier, and you know that it's going to be robust, even though it's only got a simple stream. So it really comes down to your use case, but there are certainly ways of making it cope with different information. And like I said, if you combine that kind of thing with Python, which we've done a lot over the last few months, there are languages like Python that are incredibly good at coping with unstructured information and formatting it into the right places, doing the kind of ETL, the extract, transform and load process. So yeah, there are certainly ways and means around it. You just need to think about what's the sort of best solution in that instance, really.
Okay, perhaps we'll deal with a couple more here. There's a couple related questions about how you implement an automated robot in an environment that's very cyber security or in a secure, restricted environment. Any thoughts on that?
So you can have, robots can run in various places. They can run on your own machine. They can run on a virtual machine. They could run on, I guess, your network that you've got. So it would all depend on what your IT would allow. So we've had various, I think right from the beginning, when we do an implementation, IT have to be very involved, because if you don't, then they can ask a lot of questions about where data is being pushed. I think if it was a very, very secure environment, it could sit within that organization's IT structure, no problem at all. And you could limit the connections with, external IT sources as well. So there are also IT concerns around, I told you it logs in for passwords and things. It does have a very secure vault, but that would probably break a few IT policies. So there are ways of getting around that as well. But UiPath does deal, their vaults for saving passwords and sensitive information are very, very secure. And again, you could save all of that information within your IT structure or current structure as well.
Okay, thanks very much. In fact, there's a few more questions around that area. There's a few challenges, I think, in terms of whether reskilling will be sufficient. I think some people remain to be convinced on that, but I think what we'll do, James, we'll save up those questions and make sure you've got them, and then perhaps we'll work out how to put some responses on the site. I think would be a good way forward on that. So let's just kind of move forward a little bit.
Sure.
Reflective practice. We ask this, I call this the killer question. And we ask this at the end of each session. And what we want you to really do is then immediately reflect, pause and reflect. What have you learned, or what would you do differently as a result of attending this session? This is what I call the event ROI question, in terms of what's going to change as a result of attending here. And it'd be great if people could provide this feedback. I think it'd be encouraging to James, but also it's a bit of intentionality on your part. So
it's good that people are already thinking of processes that
yes,
their highlight reporting. It makes people think, oh yeah, I could get it to do that. I could get it to do this.
Yeah, I bet there's some folk have been off researching it straight away. But
yeah,
absolutely. So so thank you for those responses. Someone's going to build a bot.
Yeah, no, I saw, and somebody said they want to play around with UiPath. Yeah, fully recommend it. It's great fun.
Yeah, I think that's good. Review the automation application in my business. Kind of where is a business and what's going there that you can kind of roll out further or build on. I think is strong.
Yeah, I think discuss with IT as I see as that it is really important that you kind of get over those hurdles right in the beginning, and it doesn't stop you halfway through your sort of implementation.
Good. So we'll keep that feedback coming. That's absolutely fantastic. We value that, and say we'll make sure that's shared with you as well.
Brilliant.
Okay, as we come towards a close, there's just I'm going to do some parish notices, upcoming top-notch events. So there's a meetup, a hackathon, a webinar, and a conference. So we'll run through those very quickly. The next London meetup event, and I know you do meet in various parts of the country as well, is entitled Hyper Reality: Panel Insights into the Impact of Project Data Analytics. So you can see some of the people that will be involved in that. Sir Robert McAlpine are involved, some of your people from Projecting Success, Thames Water, and APM. And I know that John McGlynn, our chair of the board of directors, will be there on the panel, which will be fantastic. And also PMI are represented in there. So big opportunity. Starts with pizza and drinks at 6 o'clock. And I've been along to a lot of these. Quite often you get to up to 100 people there. So great networking event. That one, Wednesday the 22nd of January. And the Project Hack that I mentioned, the 5th in the series, fantastic venue, Microsoft Reactor in London. You'll get more pizza and food there. And again, support from Sir Robert McAlpine, PMO Learning, and other people provide your challenges. I think you're getting more and more challenges from different organizations. So fantastic experience, and potentially something that you might be able to do to take this forward. A webinar here. This is a webinar that will occur on the 17th of February. So if you can join us again then, Hugo Mini is going to be running that webinar. Hugo is the lead author of a recently published guide to using a benefits management framework. So that book, something of an APM bestseller, is available. I do recommend, if you're able to obtain it and read it beforehand. That one's going to be titled Benefits Management Framework for Prioritizing Programs, 17th of February. And finally, this is a really an excellent event that is being staged by the Program Management SIG. It's their annual conference. It takes place in the Think Tank Science Museum in Birmingham. So again, a lot of this stuff will no doubt also broaden your horizons, etc. That's the 12th of March. It's entitled The Art and Science of Program Management, and I strongly recommend that one. I'll be at that one too. So that's good. In terms of our keeping to schedule, I think we're 2 minutes ahead of time with no bots involved. I think we've done pretty well. James, a massive thank you to you, James, for doing that. And I know it's taken a lot of preparation. But,
it's an absolute pleasure, Maya. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
We've really enjoyed it. Thanks everyone for responding in Mentimeter. We know we've got a lot of questions. We'll take them away and give you some of our own thoughts. So enjoy the rest of your day.